Hello, I'm Mai, and welcome to my multiplayer Let's Play on EA Hinnom. I'll be narrating this Let's Play in a after-action report style, which means I've already played the turns, and as of the time of this recording, I'm playing into the late game where I have some benefits of hindsight knowledge, reviewing my turns and nation. In this episode 0 introduction video, I'll introduce the nation, its units, the pretender build, and my thought processes before starting the game. So, I'll be playing Hinnom in an unusual way, as I've chosen to forego the popular Doom Blesses that is usually associated with this nation, to opt into playing a full-scale playstyle of Hinnom. Not all nations go well with a full-scales build, so I'll analyze the nation for you. I'll show you why I think Hinnom fits well into this playstyle. But before that, I would like to disclaim that partway through this game, Dominions went through a moderate balancing patch that altered the way others might play a scales Hinnom. I believe for the most part, the balancing patch helps a scales Hinnom playstyle, but it would have hindered the way opposing Blood and Death nations in this game particularly may have played through this gameplay. It was around turn 50 or 60 when this patch happened, so it hits into the early parts of the late game. There will also be the replay bug, where different game versions will show different battle results. So we may see different battles from what the battle results show. So, here's the Dom Inspector. We'll use this to analyze the mages and units in the nation, and answer why scales is good for the nation. To answer if a nation fits well with scales, there's a few questions I like to ask and answer when examining if it's a good idea. To do this, we need to see and understand what the nation's mages and units are before answering any questions. Now, before I want to work out if scales is good, I want to ask and answer questions like, does the nation have good out-of-cat mages? Does it have diverse battle strategies for those out-of-cat mages? Does it have good out-of-cat troops? Does it have access to impactful mid to late game battle strategies? So the first mage we're going to examine, starting with the capital mages, we have two. The first is the Ball. The Ball has our deepest magic access at Fire 3, Earth 3, and Astral 3, and a tiny 10% chance to get a cross path or a depth 4 access. For the most part, you shouldn't plan to get a depth 4 mage with very low odds of getting it, but it's important that there is access to the Earth Astral cross path for the nation. But you shouldn't plan to get that cross path, but it is possible. The next unit is the most iconic unit for the nation, the Melqart. This guy is a powerful thug with good stats and is your best blood magic depth at Blood 3. Looking at it, its paths are decent for thugging, but I don't view Blood as a generally useful thugging path for most of the game. Looking at it, we have Fire 2, Earth 2, and Astral 2 as its combat paths. And it's a chance, not a chance, you get one of each of them. You don't get all of them, obviously, since it's a random path. Because it only has these solo paths, I wouldn't consider a Melqart a true super combatant. I would consider a true super combatant someone who would have more total paths, so 2 or 3 paths like Death 3, Fire 2, or say Astral and Earth, Air and Water, such combos, so you have more access to buffs. That said, it can handle most armies if they have poor to no magic support, but it gets dicey if he bumps into someone expecting a Melqart. Fire, Earth, and Astral are both good and bring different combat styles to situations. In particular, the Astral Melqart can be equipped to teleport and counterattack threats it's specialized to handle through its gear. Melqarts also have amazing leadership at 160, which is shown here, which gives a +3 morale bonus, which is a huge boost for leading troops. Now, for the out-of-cap mages, we have first the Akka, which is a Nature 2 and Healer 2 mage, which means he can cure diseases and afflictions from other units. The healing trait allows this guy to do things like keep feeble-minded mind hunters healthy, as well as keeping thugs and troops healthy. The Nature 2 allows us to cast almost all major nature spells if a booster is added on. Spells like Mass Protection, Mass Regeneration, Relief, or Swarm will be this guy's main duty. Having a Nature 2 mage is key in a scales build that is centered along troop buffing. Next we have the Ami. See if I can click that. Okay. Now this is the bread and butter mage for the nation. The Ami has 2 random paths of Fire, Air, Earth, and Astral. All of these are very useful combat paths, with a small asterisk put on the Air Mage. Starting with Fire 2. Fire 2 is the key magic level for depths. You want to cast almost all things fire that fire wants to do. Powering the mage to Fire 3 with Phoenix Power lets this mage easily cast fire elementals, as well as any fire evocations such as Fireball, Fire Cloud, and later Pillars of Fire. Next, Air 2. Normally you would want to be able to have someone who can cast Storm to get the most out of an Air 2 mage, so that they can Storm Power up to Air 3 and cast things like Thunderstrike, or battlefield spells like Mass Flight. Hinnom doesn't have any access to anything higher than Air 2, so getting the most out of these mages is blocked off until you figure out how to get something with Air 3. But for now, Air 2, these are useful for casting Air Elementals and Lightning Bolt, so they can still find use even early in the game for important tasks that no one else in the nation can do. Next up is Earth 2. Earth 2 is an important path access to have for troop buffing, with spells like Strength of Giants, Legions of Steel, and later Armies of Gold. They're also able to cast Earthquake. Another important use for them is that they're able to craft Dwarven Hammers, which makes getting gear from Melqarts much cheaper over the long term in the game. Lastly, we have Astral 2. Astral 2 is again just the right amount of astral to cast and craft most things you may want. As a base, an Astral 2 mage can spam Mindburn or Body Ethereal. Later, the Ami can cast Power of the Spheres and cast Light of the Northern Stars to empower all Astral mages on the field to Astral 3, which allows spell spam of things like Soul Slay or Paralyze. They may also form a communion to do almost anything we may require out of a large path boosting communion, such as Mass Enslave, and they can also act as boosters for mages we put crystal matrixes on. Okay. Next up is the Horite Shaman. The Horite Shaman is the only mage with non-blood cross paths. It's also our only mage with death access at Death 1. Death 1 itself isn't too useful on its own, but with a cheap 30 gem empowerment, if we can't trade for a death booster, it can bootstrap us into death. Its cross paths aren't particularly useful paths, but as a worst case scenario with no other options, we can empower him to get needed cross paths, such as Fire Death, Fire Earth, Astral Earth, or Astral Nature. The cross paths are useful though for site searching early in the game, so we want to make a couple shaman to do that early on. Next up is the Kohen, a Holy 1, Blood 1, plus a random of Fire, Earth, and Astral. At an expensive 250 gold cost, these mages are hard to justify recruiting early on for anything other than blood hunting, and even then eating 20 population a turn, as well as raising unrest makes it difficult to mass them unless you're ready to blood hunt with patrollers ready. Their single random path of Fire, Earth, and Astral aren't especially useful, and other mages like the Melqarts and Baal have the same cross paths, but higher access. So this guy's primary job will likely to be blood hunting, or in the late game communioning. Oh, there we go. With Blood Sabbath slaves with the Blood 1 path they have. And they would bring in high access to Fire and Earth to a general communion that won't need crystal matrices on other mages. Once recruited, these guys have about the same upkeep cost as the non-sacred Ami. So the costs for these guys are primarily upfront in gold compared to the rest of the mages in the nation. After these guys are 2 priests. Each are Holy 1. The one that costs 5 more gold has 10 leadership over the one without, that costs cheaper, has no leadership. So unless you need them to lead sacred troops, which we don't plan to do, the 65 gold version is usually what you want to use. And that'll cover your basic preaching and holy site searching if you want to do that. Next up, the nation's only non-mage commander is the Avite commander, with a respectable 80 leadership, which allows it to get a +1 leadership morale bonus to troops and full formation access. Unless we find indie commanders with 80 leadership, these are who we're going to want to be leading troops around for battles, as the small morale bonus is an aid in preventing routes, and the full formation axis allows tactical flexibility through formations like the line formation. And there's the small caveat that since these are fort recruits, it's gonna cost a turn of mage recruitment to get these guys. So we want to keep recruitment of these to a minimum to our needs. Hinnom has one unique mage summon at Blood 9. There we go. And at Blood 9, for 177 blood slaves, we get the Grigori, which has 6 unique summons, which are all very powerful mages. They bring slightly higher path access than what our nation gets for mage recruitment, and they do bring some cross paths. As you can see here, they mostly have 2 to 3 path access. So the cross path access can be useful if you don't have it elsewhere. But at the Tech 9 research level, along with almost 200 slaves for each, it is a huge investment to get all of them if you're in need of their paths. Next, we will cover troops. First, we're looking at the Raphite warrior, the scourge of new players who don't know how to deal against and defend against giants with a water 10 or fortitude regen plus rush. At a massive 130 gold cost with high unrest and pop eating, these guys are a huge investment to use and maintain, but they are very strong sacreds if you want to build a bus around them. These are some of the most fearsome capital sacreds in the game. Now, we're gonna forget about them for this playthrough as we're playing full scales, not a Doom Plus, and we will not be using them. Next, we have the meat and potatoes of this nation, the Dawn Guard. At size 3, it is a respectable giant that fits 2 to a square. What makes this guy worth crafting a scales build around, however, is his good attack and defense score. You can see with the Dawn Blade, it is, if it'll hover over, an attack skill of 14 and a defense skill of 16 with 4 defense skill from the shield. With the solid skills and solid equipment of a decent medium body protection, decent helmet, good shield. In addition, we find a very rare weapon, a magic weapon with very high damage bonus for a one-hander. Combination of 14 attack skill and a magic weapon makes this guy strong and versatile against whatever he may face. The powerful early game units like fire or air elementals who rely on ethereal to ignore attacks from troops are countered by this magic weapon. Later in the game, it allows the Dawn Guard to pop defensive buffs like fog warriors and ignore vulnerability buffs. Combination of the magic weapon and good base attack skill of 14 makes this a solid unit to scale into the late game, where it still finds usefulness when armies of gold, mass regeneration, and mass regeneration come up, and late game summons become common. The bodyguard too also brings some utility, making it a good bodyguard for attacks on mages from assassinations. The Dawn Guard is weak in areas though. At 14 protection, it has average armor, although at 16 defense skill and a solid shield, it's better than most infantry in the early era. It does suffer from having low attack density, and it struggles to deal with damage to high proc targets with its 24 damage attack. At 40 gold and 32 resources, it's pretty expensive to recruit even as far as giants go. The Dawn Guard being a out of cap unit, and its good stats and magic weapon makes it great for a scales build. Next we have the Avite Light Infantry and Avite Swordmen and Spearmen. Look at them here. These are similar yet weaker versions of the Dawn Guard. They are normal troops with normal gear and non-magical weapons. For the most part, we'll focus on recruiting Dawn Guard over these, due to the Dawn Guard having better attack and defense skills as well as the magic weapon, which gives it advantages over normal generic weapons. For more supportive troops, we have the Horites next. So that's the Horite champion. The Horite hunter. The Horite and Horite champion are basic cavemen, one having some furs and more attack skill. These guys cost 1 or 2 resources, so if we find ourselves in need of a lot of troops suddenly, we can spam recruit these guys on a front to get 20 or 30 a turn to replenish or build a army. They're also useful in having a two-handed club, which means it does very good damage at 29 damage a hit after strength bonuses. That's 5 more damage than a Dawn Guard does. So it's useful if I need to bring a harder hitting attack than what the Dawn Guard provides. The Horite Hunter is special in that it has a net attack, which means when it nets a enemy they get reduced to 0 defense skill. This is useful for handling things like Pans or Van Cavalry, which rely on high defense skill to avoid attacks. Getting an enemy down to 0 defense skill means that you can surround the unit and hit all your attacks consistently on it. This is very good for giant troops like Hinnom, who hit hard but may struggle with low attack skill and low attack density. As a netted foe who may get surrounded gets clubbed 10 times for 20 to 30 damage, hitting attacks, quickly piling up the damage. Next is the Avite Hornblower. This is a standard bearer, which is always nice to mix into squads to boost morale. It'll help keep your army troops fighting longer by staving off retreats. Next is the Avite Heavy Archer. The Avite Heavy Archer is the main archer unit for the nation. It has very high body protection and a strong bow that hits for 11 damage, with a notable attribute that strength is not added to the damage of the weapon for the bow. I'm not a big fan of this unit due to its high gold and resource cost, making it hard to mass compared to human archers. Generally, if you want arrows in battles, you spam recruit bow units, which is slow to do with these guys. Next is the Enkidu Slave. This is the one slave unit we get. It has furs and a basic low damage attack that is hard to land with a pretty low attack skill of 7. At 11 gold, it's your best castle sieging or castle stuffer, but it's pretty useless in a fight as anything but evocation bait, with its morale penalty of being a slave. Unless you're very gold restricted, you should use Horite champions over these guys if you need help in battles. Generally, giant nations like Hinnom don't struggle with getting siege strength through their Dawn Guard and Champion, so Enkidu slaves generally won't be needed to help in sieging down a castle. Next is the Avite Chariot here. This guy is a trampler unit used like elephants in other nations, but at 75 gold it's cheaper, but comes with some upsides and downsides compared to the average elephant. As an upside, it has 12 morale, which is better than most tramplers. Throw in a hornblower for another +1 morale, and a good commander to lead him for another +1 morale bonus. And these tramplers have decent protection against early routing. They have good protection at Prot 16, and decent HP compared to other non-elephant tramplers. They are only size 5, which doesn't make it the biggest unit on the battlefield. Trampler units tend to have very high upkeep costs, which makes it a unit you want to either use it or lose it type of mindset. A common mistake I see people make for high upkeep units like the Chariot or Elephants is that they recruit them while at peace and maybe sit with them all game in forts waiting. After a couple turns, and especially once their upkeep stacks up, they're going to cost as much as forts just to pay for them to sit around. So sitting on them for turns turns into a upkeep trap. You should only recruit these guys if you're going to be using them in battles right away. Lastly, we have the unique summons. First is the Mazik, the cheap stealthy flyer with very high attack density at 12 per square thanks to its size 1 and 2 attacks from its claws. Their damage is pretty weak and they have very low durability. It's going to suffer against most troops and even province defense, so I'm not a big fan of them. They're okay for sieging, but Hinnom doesn't have issues sieging forts with the other troops they have running around. They can be useful for surrounding a thug to get its defense skill down quickly with harassment penalties if you're having issues with something stacking defense. However, this is something that the Horite Hunter with its net also can do, and it doesn't cost gems for the Hunter, where Mazik's costs mage turns and gems, bringing that to a downside. They can find some use as blood patrollers. At a gem per unit cost, they're about as efficient as wolves for patrolling if you're summoning wolves with a Nature 1 mage. By using Mazik, they can be useful in not tipping off other nations that you started blood hunting, as someone seeing Mazik on the border may not think they're there to be patrolling unrest, whereas wolves are commonly associated with blood hunting. Next we have the Shud, and I believe it might be pronounced Zaire. The Shud, let's bring this up as well. We have Storm Demon. Okay. The Shed is simply a better version of the Storm Demon. They're blood summons that dish out ranged lightning damage from their lightning attack. The damage is based on their strength. So, they have higher strength than the Storm Demon. They have twice the HP. They have more natural protection. They're cheaper to recruit as well as more mage turn efficient. If we pair it, you can see we get 3 Shed for 28 slaves, whereas a Bind Storm Demon spell is 1 demon for 10 slaves. So you're reducing the mage turn by 1/3, as well as saving on 2 blood slaves to get the Shed. You'll want to use these guys in your armies once you get blood hunting set up, as they're a very solid addition to your army in diversifying your damage through the lightning damage attack and the ranged attack, which will supplement your Dawn Guard and Horite champions. Second, we have the Zaire. They have Berserking with 3 melee attacks, or they would have 6 attacks per square. Their base damage is a little low due to being sacred, but due to being sacred, they take damaging or defensive pluses very well. If you can boost their strength with, say, Strength of Giants, and maybe a Blood Surge plus, they can really begin to dish out high damage per square. This is your most killy melee unit, and should be the first thing you think of if you need more damage, but Horites aren't enough. When you transition into a blood economy, they should be added into your armies to raise your damage output, acting as the hammer to your Dawn Guard's anvil. Lastly, inside the Dom Inspector, we want to look at the nation's heroes. Let's see if we can get that to fix. There we go. Hinnom gets 5 national heroes with higher path access than what the nation normally recruits. You can see that's Earth, Air, Astral, Nature, Fire, all at 4. With them you can reach the magic access needed to cast most globals such as Earth, Blood, Deep Well, Gift of Health, Eternal Pyre, as well as Deep Astral access. The 6th hero, the son of Azazel, is decent with it giving us Fire Astral cross paths we didn't have before. The dream heroes to get would be the Nature and Astral heroes, which gives us very powerful globals Hinnom can't otherwise easily get to. Getting either of them in a game could be game-changing to how the mid and late game is handled. Now, that covers most of the basics of the nation. Now that we've reviewed what they have, let's get back to the main screen. That's not it. That here, back to the units. Now that we've reviewed what the nation has, we can see that with Earth Ami and Nature Aka mages, we can cast many of the powerful troop buffs on our scalable Horite and Dawnguard troops. Mass Protection and later Armies of Gold with Mass Regeneration creates a core of army power that doesn't need any help from capital mages or capital troops. The Fire, Air, and Astral Ami can provide offensive battle magic and doesn't depend on any cat mages to set them up in battles. The Horite Shaman aren't particularly useful in battles, but provide strategic usefulness with their cross paths, insight searching, crafting, and as a base for working up the death magic tree. Kohen, and occasionally with the help of Fall or Melqarts, provide a base of mages to blood hunt and supplement armies with our strong blood summons. The Fall mage gives us our deepest magic access, but aren't essential to getting off any battlefield magic, as Fire, Astral, and Earth are good enough in battle to do most things from a base path of 2. Melqarts are capable thugs even without a bless, who can handle unprepared armies or provide battle support, or when equipped properly can handle threats easily. Right, let's get back to the game. Now, there are specifically questions I want to answer. When preparing to play a nation in the game. Here we go. To start, I want to imagine what my big, medium, and small armies will look like, and what they will be doing at different stages of the game. A quick glance here, I can imagine using an Ami or Aka to cast a few spells, like the Elemental or buff troops to lead 10 or 15 troops in a small army. And this small army can cheaply raid provinces. So that is what my small army would look like. For medium armies, I can use a core of troops like Dawnguard and Horites, and include a range of spells for some battle-wide buffs like Mass Protection and Ami can spam path-specific spells like Legions of Steel, Fireball, Mindburn, or Soulslay, as well as Conjuration 5 Elementals. For medium army, I generally avoid using more than a couple gems per fight. For large armies, I can blanket my troops with big buffs and support them with a large amount of useful mage evocation, armies of gold, mass regeneration, relief, specific resistance spells, rush of strength, with threatening spells like Firestorm, Earthquake, or large Astral Communion spells thrown in for big threats in battles. Next, I want to examine if I have thugs, how good their chassis is to kill enemy thugs, and if they can magic move to those enemy thugs. The Melqart can do all these things, as well as survive bumping into medium armies. It has very high HP. We can look at it, I suppose. Very high HP. Good base equipment, good attack skill, defense skill. It has full item slots. So we know that we can equip this guy for the job we need him to do. And with high stats, it is a very good chassis to tackle many jobs we might have for it. Next, I want to examine or think out my site searching plans. The Forite Shaman covers Earth and Nature 1 as well as Death 1. The 3-path axis on this one mage makes it very mage turn efficient to use this guy as one of my early site searchers. And 1 moment to drink. Earth and Nature are the gems I need most. Early to get equipment for Melqarts and cast early buffs, such as mass protection. I don't have any base air income, so getting out a air Ami is important. As I start with 2 fire income, I don't immediately need something to search for fire. Like I do with Earth or Nature. I can search for fire once I've built up my infrastructure, but I don't want to sacrifice the early research in the first 1 to 2 years. If I roll fire... What's it for me? If I roll fire Ami, I'd rather have them researching to get faster tech. Both Ami and Akka can efficiently use remote site searching spells, so once I have some gem income and time, I can near fully search my lands and not miss high magic sites. So, I want to figure out what strategy I want to use to kill a nation in the second year. Of play when the first round of wars to begin. For this, my main idea would be to use Dawn Guard, supported by the Akka and Ami mages, casting spells such as Wooden Warriors, as well as summoning Conjuration 5 elementals. You can also include kitted Melqarts and generic thug gear to use in raiding our battles, and the combination of troops supported by those mages and Melqarts will be my path to winning a early war. I also want to know how I plan to crack and kill forts. Generally, trying to ram troops at a castle gate is a good way to lose a lot of money, or even lose battles. So I want to try to look for sources of damage that can ignore getting held up at the choke in the gate. I have 3 easy options for this. My first is Earthquake, which can devastate a defending army from doing what it wants to do, killing the backline mages and any low protection troops. My giants, with their decent prot and even good HP, are resilient against 2 Earthquake casts where human mages would be expected to die from 2 casts of Earthquake. The next is, I guess, to summon size 6 air elementals from my air random mages. Air elementals can wreak havoc in a fort, trampling over troops and mages alike with their high HP and high defense skill. With Ethereal, they are hard for defenders to defend against. My third option is to use chariots and to have them trample a hole through a gate on attack rear orders, busting a hole that my troops can hopefully push into the fort with. Planning out how to clear forts before you get into wars is critically important. As having to sit on someone's capital with a large chunk of mages and troops and not know how to win the castle battle is a common path to losing out on a winning position in the game. So, we know what our small, medium, and large armies may look like in the early to mid-game. We know we have good accessibility to thugs through the Melqart. We've planned on how we're going to get our site searching started, and we know how we want to fight our first war, as well as how we want to clear forts. Next, we can finally get to this pretender design that I will be using. So for this, I obviously want to go full scales, as full scales as I can, but I also want to include a light but useful bless. So we're taking Imprisoned to get maximum points. As a base, I want Earth 4 to get Reinvigoration 2. This allows the Melqarts to get 2 Reinvigoration, which means with only 1 Reinvigoration item, they're fatigue neutral, and they will not need 2 fatigue items to get fatigue neutral. This frees up an item slot on these thugs, which is very valuable throughout all stages of the game, and not only reducing gem costs for thugging early, but also giving us more slots we can have free to equip items later. After that, I'm pretty open to what I want. I had Baratos and Russ in the game, so I was thinking about taking Air 4 to get magic. Lightning resistance, not magic resistance. This golden idol is a good chassis for us to use in a scaled build, as it has the earth we need. We can add in that air 4 to get lightning resistance or shock resistance, and this gives us 15. This lightning resistance makes it so that Thunderstrike and air elementals have difficulty killing Melqarts. Later in the game it gives our Sacred Sire some defensive boost as well. So, I think I already said we had Baratos and Russ in the game. So that's why I opted to get lightning resistance. Both of those nations are very reliant on lightning damage in the early game. So having this plus allows me to fight them early, where normally it'd be very difficult for Melqarts to fight them. Getting the Earth 4, Air 4 cross path gives us a couple things we can do for crafting as well. The big thing is we can do Staff of Elemental Mastery, which gives us Elemental Path Boost. It's a two-handed item that costs something like 30 or 20 air and earth gems, so it's pretty expensive to get, but the path boost is very useful. The Air 4 also lets us get air booster helmets, which we can put on any of our Air 2 mages, which then allows us to cast storms in fights. So that would be a way to solve our need to find Air 3 access. Blood Surge is where the leftover points went, and we took Blood Surge. The attack skill and defense attack damage boost gives some consistency damage bonuses to our Sire once we get them buffed up. There's also a couple Air Blood unique crafting items and boosters, so it's decent as well. Let's get our actual scales up so you can see that. I think for this build I did something like this. Now you can see that it now costs -6 points to do this build, but I believe the calf golden idol was slightly nerfed in the recent patch, increasing its costs. So you can't entirely replicate the build I'll be doing. In the place of it, I would consider cutting a scale, either order or production. And get maybe a candle up to 6. Where can we put this? Nowhere. Maybe go Earth 5, which gets you Earthblood Deepwell access. But this is... I'd have to think about it more to figure out what you might want to do. You do need production skills, so you can keep crafting out your Dawn Guard, as you're primarily resource constrained for that. Luck 3 is, I think, somewhat essential to a scales build for Hinnom, gives you access to your heroes, and getting most any of your heroes is very impactful for your middle game. So you can cast those globals. Luck also synergizes with full scales, with magic scales, growth, production, or order being at 3. Get access to very good events. Each one gives you different types of events as a theme. With luck, magic gives you more gem events and magic item events. Growth, production, and order all give a bit of gold, but I believe growth gives you population or possibly province-based income boosts. It's possible production gives base province boosts, but the order gives you unrest reduction. So something like this is what I might do for a build. You do want to keep your candle probably at least 5, as if you take too low of a dominion, you're gonna get candles pushed in. And that's pretty bad for a scales build where you generally want to have your candles completely filling your land, as that's how you get access to your good events and your good income. So, I think that wraps up my thoughts. I tried to find a balance in getting the most info I can get into this while hopefully not dragging on too much. And we did a units overview. We analyzed our early game as well as our mid game with the army compositions, our uses for mages, our troops, what our small, medium, big armies might look like, what they'd be casting. We prepared strategies before starting the game on what our first war would look like. And we showed the build, which I ended up using is this. Actually, I can show you over here too. It's the game. Okay, it's this one. So that covers everything I wanted to talk about. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you for turn 1 in this Hinnom Let's Play.